morning. And I know that it might storm later, but I love that the sun is shining this morning. The reason why is I want to tell y'all what happened to me yesterday. So yesterday, I had a wedding in Chincoteague on the water. And so it was at 6 o'clock. And, so I'm driving I just want to talk to y'all for a little bit. So I'm driving to the wedding, and it's raining. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm just going to go in, and I'm just going to encourage them the best that I can. And so I went in, and they're looking at me. They're like, you're not doing your job. What's up? You're a pastor. You're supposed to provide some good weather here, you know? And so they're trying to decide what they want to do, and they thought about going to the reception hall and having the ceremony there. And they decided that they were just, the bride was like, no, I'm going to have it outside. We're just going to chance it. Well, so I go out with the groom, and we're standing out there, and it's raining just a little bit. And I looked at him. I said, look, it's going to be okay. I said, either way, you're always going to remember this moment, right? And you're getting married, for goodness sake. It's going to be awesome. So we're standing there waiting, and the lady at the hotel was like, hey, Pastor, we need you to hurry them up. They've got to get going because I'm telling you, I've lived in Chincoteague forever. There's a bad storm coming. We've got to hurry up and get this thing going. And so I'm standing out there waiting like, oh, please, God, hurry up, hurry up. Well, let me tell you, this will be a wedding that I will never forget because as the bride's coming down the aisle, it just starts pouring, right? And she's still smiling, bless her heart. And she gets up there, and she's like, go for it. So I'm reading, right? It starts thundering, it starts lightning, and everybody's looking at me. And let's check this out. The wind is blowing so hard that my notebook and my page are just flying off in the water. And everything behind me, you know, where the unity table set up with a candle and all that, they had like a little cross thing set up, and it all fell down. And I looked up at one point, and everybody was taking off inside. The more it lightened, the more they were running. And I'm standing out there with them trying to pronounce them, and it's husband and wife, and everybody was gone. And I just prayed over them for one quick minute, and they were smiling. They're like, it's okay. It doesn't matter what's going on with the rain. We know that God is with us. And I said, that's right. And so, needless to say, this pastor got soaking wet coming home last night. Because there was only one door that we could get back into the hotel, and there was a line, and so it was a good time. It was a good time. So today I appreciate the sun, and I appreciate you guys making it a priority to come today. And when I think about priorities, I think about my own life. I think about when I have one day a week off. Sometimes it's just a half a day here and there, but whatever chance I get, I try to take advantage of it because we live such busy lives with the kids' activities and events that a lot of times my household chores and errands get pushed aside, and I procrastinate with them. And I always say this, I say, you know what, I'll get that on my day off. And as my day off gets closer, I begin to make a list of all the things that I put off all week that I've got to do. And I know that I have to go to the store because I got a 15-year-old in the house. Anybody got some teenagers? Go ahead and make some noise. Come on. If you have a teenager. So I got a 15-year-old in the house. I'm not going to single that person out right now and embarrass him, but the boy can eat. So I got to make sure I go to the store. I got to do the laundry. I got to run the errands. I got to work out because I got to take care of myself so I can take care of my family and my church. And I look at the list, and it gets longer and longer and longer, these things that I have to get done. And then I say to myself, okay, Dana, let's just take a deep breath, and let's go ahead and prioritize these things in order. What's the things that you would like to see get done? And so I make my list, and I put on the top the important things that I would like to have done, like maybe 3 things at the top of the list that if I don't get anything else done, those are the 3 things that I definitely have to do first. And then I notice that as the day goes on, unexpected things happen. I'm doing random things that I didn't have on my list because sometimes that's what life throws to us. Like the repairman that I call. And don't you love it? They say to us, oh, sure, Miss Stauffer, we'll be there between the hours of 9 and noon. Are you kidding me right now? Like, how am I supposed to get the things that are on my list and keep my priorities in order if I don't even know what time you're coming? And if we were all just really honest today, we would say that most of the time, they don't even come between the hours of 9 and noon, Jeff. They come about 2 o'clock. So then I get discouraged and disappointed because the things that I had as a priority on my list didn't get done. And then I began to think about, many of us can identify with this in our life. And the reason why is because most people would sit down and say, okay, we all want a good life, right? We want to do good things. We want to make the right decisions. And so I began to think, okay, well, I'm going to put Jesus, to me, would be the thing I need to put at the top of my list, because he should be over everything. Because when he's over everything, everything else underneath will work out. So really, if we look at our priorities today, we should have Jesus at the top of the list. But what happens is things of this world start to take place, these random things. And we find ourselves doing random things like random thoughts or random actions. And before you know it, this Jesus that's supposed to be over everything has now fallen down to the bottom of the list. Random things. Like, we want to go to church every week, but, sorry, it's going to get ugly for just a few minutes. We want to go to church every week, but the night before, we were having a good time with our kids, and we went to the baseball game, and then afterwards we went to get something to eat, which is totally cool. But it would be easy the next day when the alarm clock goes off to say, well, I'm just not going to go to church today because, I think Jesus would understand that I need to get some sleep, that I can't be the best Christian I need to be if I don't have any sleep. And so we set it on snooze, and the problem is when we do it just that one time, the next week it's harder to get up the next time. And the same thing goes with our devotional life. I mean, really, when we have Jesus over everything, up at the top of our list should also be the fact that we will get up, we will read our word, that we will have good priorities for our kids because we want to display these good things upon them, like coming to church, reading the word. And so we have good intentions. We want that at the top of our list. But this world kind of corrupts us, and these random things take us here and there. And before we know it, Jesus has gone from the top to the bottom. And all we have really is to give Jesus the leftovers. And what starts to happen in our lives is we don't understand why there's these problems that keep coming up on the surface of our lives. We don't understand why there's a problem over here and a problem over there. And oh man, I got problems at work, and I got problems at home, and I got problems with my kids. Lord knows they need a good beating. But I got problems with my kids, and all these things start taking place because what's happened is, whether we want to or not, we've got our priorities all out of order. What once used to be important to us, Jesus over everything, has become Jesus at the bottom. And these things have occurred in our life. It's not that we get up every day and we say, you know what? I'm going to move Jesus from this top of the list, and I'm going to put him at the bottom of the list. It's not that at all. Things happen, life happens, and before you know it, we've developed this problem of doing things a certain way, these patterns, if you will, in our life. And because our priorities have gotten out of whack, the patterns have gotten out of whack as well. But it's important that we recognize these patterns in our life, because these patterns can result in a problematic life. And the sooner that we can recognize that the problem is in the pattern, the better off that we are. And we see that Jesus knows about the patterns. We know that he knows that this world can corrupt us, that this world that we live in, that we can be exposed to things and we can start doing things of the world. And so he tells us in the Bible about the patterns, and we see that today. I'm going to keep it easy. Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. Many of you know it by heart. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. But check this out. Do not conform to the pattern. Look at your neighbor, say pattern. It's okay, we're a friendly church. We took a bath this morning, hopefully. Pattern of this world. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will, that is good, pleasing, and perfect. So the title of my message today is The Patterns of a Problematic Life. I'm talking about the problematic life that comes when we develop certain patterns, which comes from a lack of priority. And it must have been pretty important because Paul is pointing it out to us here. He's trying to get the believers straight. He's trying to say that, look, there's a pattern that you need to be aware of, because he saw them going this way and that way and this way. And he saw that there's a pattern of the world. You see, patterns can be good and they can be bad. And so this week, I was sitting there taking a list of different patterns, and I thought, you know what? There's lots of patterns. I mean, there's traffic patterns, there's sleep patterns, right? There's musical patterns, there's mathematical patterns, and I don't know if I said sleep patterns, but there's sleep patterns. There's all kinds of patterns. But we have to be aware of the patterns in our life that have so messed up our priorities. The patterns of a problematic life. Just like there are patterns in the traffic, patterns in the music, and so forth, there's also patterns that Jesus wants to make us aware of. In fact, he uses different verses to do that. I want to look at 2 Timothy. This is just one that uses the word pattern in it. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 13 says, what you heard from me, keep as the pattern of sound teaching with faith and love in Christ Jesus. You see, Paul is training Timothy to be a good minister. He doesn't want him to think that he can just go through the motions and just get up and preach and that be it, that it just becomes some kind of pattern. He wants it to be more like that. He wants him to have the priority to keep the gospel alive so that the church can keep striving. Okay? That's what he wants there, is because your priorities produce a pattern. Say it with me. Your priorities produce a pattern. For example, people crack me up. They say, I'm not a morning person. But if we were to study their pattern at night, then we would figure out what the problem is, right? We would see that they're staying up late watching TV. Okay? We see that when they finally get to sleep, they worry about everything, so then they can't sleep. And then they think about when they're laying in bed, man, I shouldn't have went off on my kids at 9:30, but you know what? They wouldn't get to bed. They kept getting out of bed asking for something to drink and something to eat, and all I want is some peace and quiet. And we lay in bed and we start thinking about all these things. And then we get up and we have to use the bathroom 8 times during the night because we drank so much water because we're trying to lose weight. So then we can't sleep at all. But really, the problem is in our pattern. It's in the bad sleeping patterns that we have. And the Lord told me today that if you don't like the product that's taking place in your life, then you've got to change the pattern. The pattern. We don't like the way our life is right now. We don't like the relationships that are around us. We don't like the way our bodies look. We don't like how the way we feel. Could it be that it's the product that needs to be changed? Could it be that the problem is not in the problem, is not in the product, the problem is in the pattern? Your priorities produce a pattern. How about instead of making excuses, really, we need to start looking at our priorities. We like to blame God when we don't get the blessings that we think we deserve. We like to blame people when different opportunities don't come our way. But meanwhile, our priorities are all messed up, and we wonder what is taking place in our life. Might I suggest to you that the problem isn't what they did or what they said? Maybe the problem is the pattern of your response. It's the pattern. It's the problem is in the pattern. And you can't change the product of something unless you change the pattern. And that happens by examining your priorities. Because if you examine your priorities, it initiates a new pattern. Examine your priorities. You see, you can't change the relationships in your life if you don't start being kinder. Okay? You can't change the way people respond to you if you're not sowing good seed. Can I get an amen in here? Okay? We can easily perceive the problems all around us, but we have a hard time discovering the pattern beneath the problem. And the enemy will try to throw up that pattern in your life, throw up the fact that your priorities are all messed up, and he likes to keep it there, and he likes to tell you, oh, you know what your problem is. You know that your priorities are out of whack, but you know what? Some things will never change. You're stuck there. There's nothing you can do about it. But I want to tell you that there is something you can do about it. That if you want a different product, you've got to change that pattern. And in order to do that, you've got to examine the pattern. And Paul must have believed that, or he wouldn't say, hey, you need to change up your pattern. He wouldn't be telling us about patterns. He's telling us, look, don't be conformed to the pattern of the world. So apparently there is a change to the pattern. You know, I had to examine the own patterns in my life as I prepare for this sermon. And I'm not just preaching at somebody today. A lot of times when I preach something, it's something that I'm dealing with. Okay, I'm preaching to myself. And I had to examine my life and my priorities. And I got tired of walking around town or talking to people saying, you know what, my life is so hectic. You know, I'm always, doing this, and we always got this, and this. But no, you're just always in a hurry, and that's your pattern. That snapped on me this week. It's not the fact that things are hectic. It's the fact that you've gotten in a pattern of always being in a hurry. Yes, life feels hectic because I'm in a hurry. Hurry is my pattern, therefore, hectic is my product. I have to learn my patterns. We have to learn our patterns. How about this one? When you speak negative things about others, even if you're joking, you're developing a pattern of negativity. And then we feel bad that we've said these horrible things. Maybe you need to pay attention to your patterns. We have to ask ourselves this question. We have to ask ourselves, what is the pattern producing in your life? What kind of patterns are you producing? Do you like the patterns that you are producing? Are you going to pass on the patterns that you are producing? Because it's your legacy. The legacy that you have will be passed on. It's a pattern. Parents, we have a pattern for our kids. Just because you grew up in a dysfunctional home, it's okay. I don't say that in the wrong way, but some of us have, right? We've had parents that maybe were negative or didn't do the things that they should have done to be there for us, okay? And so because of that, we somehow think that we have the right to pass that on to our kids because, it's generational, because my father's great-grandfather, grandfather, did it, and so that's just the way it is. No, I get tired of people thinking that just because a pattern has taken place in your life and been trickled down to you, that's the pattern that you have to continue with the rest of your life. It's about time that we come to the place, if I could preach this morning, that where we say enough is enough, that just because my father's father passed that down genetically does not mean that I have to be that kind of person. I can stand up to the pattern and I can change the pattern by recognizing and examining. Because if you want a new product in your life, it's about time that we go back to our priorities. And I know I'm stepping on some toes. And if you're here for the first time, I'm sorry, but sometimes God wakes me me up in the middle of the night and he tells me, it's about time you start preaching, Dana, and challenge your people that it's about time that we put Jesus over everything. We say that he's over everything. We say that. It's easy to say, oh, yeah, man. Psst, I go to church. What are you talking about? Yeah. You know, the one over there on West Main Street. You know, yeah. I go to the church. Really? I haven't seen you in a while. Well, this, that, and the other, okay, well, where's Jesus at? Is Jesus over everything? Because he should be the top priority of our life. And sometimes we have to get up and go to church when we don't feel like getting up. There's some mornings, to be honest with you, just be real with you this morning, that I don't feel like getting up and preaching. But you know what? I get up and I make him the priority over everything, and I get in his word. And when you start getting in his word and you show him that he is over everything, he does something inside of you. He changes you. You go around people, they're like, what is up with her? She had like a wild woman. What is she doing? It's Jesus. Because I place him over everything. Because I got tired of growing up, living the lifestyle of the world, and going out doing this, that, and the other, and then wondering why I feel so terrible. Wondering why there's no purpose in my life. Wondering why I got more problems in the math book. Because Jesus has not been over everything in my life. And as Christians, this ain't even in my notes, but as Christians, I think, we let Satan we let him come in, and we let him fill our thoughts with all this mess that we're not worthy enough, and why has God not done this? And then we get in this pattern of funk, if so to speak, and where we just feel weird, and we just go around and depressed and thinking that's it, and Jesus doesn't have any plans for us, and Jesus doesn't care about us. All the while we're sitting on Sunday morning snoring, right? I mean, it's not easy to get up. It's not easy to spend time in his word. It's not. I'm not going to try to sugar it down and sugarcoat it and say that when you're in the word, you're not going to have any problems either. But my goodness, I'd rather have Jesus next to me going through all the mess in my life than trying to wake up turning to alcohol, drugs, chasing after affirmation, chasing after material things, and then wonder why I feel so empty inside. I want to encourage you today that Jesus should be over everything. Jesus should be over everything. Now, where was I? Oh, Lord. Jesus should be over everything. We don't have to pass on the patterns. You cannot change if you do not see the pattern, if you don't examine what has taken place in your life. Change patterns lead to change products. Once we examine our priorities, once we examine the patterns in our life, we don't just sit back and say, oh, yeah, that's what I did. Yep, that's what I did. No, we've got a change has to take place. We can't get our priorities in line until we make a change in our patterns. And that's why I believe that Jesus wants us to know, do not, go back to Romans 12:2, do not conform to the pattern of this world. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world. He wants us to know that this world is going to test us. We will find ourselves with these random things that we're doing, and we're like, what? Where did that come from? The patterns of the world. He knows we're going to be tested in that area. And then I love this scripture right here. 1 John chapter 2, verse 16 says this, for everything in the world, the cravings of a sinful man, the lust of his eyes, and the boasting of what he has and does comes not from the Father, but from the world. So Jesus identifies that there's three categories, and I want to share them with you today, that can test us to the patterns of this world. Number one is the lust of the flesh, doing whatever we feel like. The lust of the eyes, what you see. The pride of the life, what you want apart from God, comes not from the Father, but from the world. You see, the enemy is attacking us, and this is the pattern that Satan likes to throw to us. But the good news today is that Jesus is over everything. He's already broke the pattern. He just wants you to accept and identify the product that needs to be changed in your pattern. And so he's telling you, look, the problem is in the pattern. And the enemy knows that. And the same problem that the devil is using to attack you is the pattern that God is going to use to bless you. When you realize what the enemy will send in your life to try to destroy you is really the thing that God will use to deliver you. Your problem is in the pattern. And in order to change it, you've got to identify the patterns. Worship team, you could come forward as I close out. You know, I'm thinking about patterns. I think about, again, my life, but I also think about people in the congregation. As I prepare for some, what are people going through? What is it like to be on their side? I can get up and preach anything for people, but really, I want to connect with them. I want them to know that I relate to what you're going through. That I'm not a perfect pastor up here just trying to preach a message. That there's priorities in my life that I also have to get straight. But I want you to know this, that oftentimes when we feel lonely, what we do is we push people away. We push people away. And that's what Satan wants us to do. We push people away. And then while we're sitting there, Satan has us in isolation. But instead of sitting there and letting him fill our thoughts, telling us no one cares, telling us, oh, you messed up this time, instead of sitting there in that, how about this? How about we change up the pattern? How about we change up our priorities? We say, you know what? I need some help. Will someone pray for me? Will someone, hey, can you just pray for me? I need some prayer. I just need some help. You don't need to know all the details, but will you pray for me? It's changing that pattern, changing the priorities up. That every day we would say, you know what? I'm not listening to the thoughts of the enemy. I'm not going to sit there and dwell on how I feel and let my feelings roll over me. Instead, I'm going to look at my list of priorities and I'm going to say, Jesus,